Yes, I am live right here for the good fight. Yes, thank you so much for joining us for the good fight right here on Tuesday. Every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. to 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. You are welcome in this space. If this is your first time joining us for the good fight, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your normal rhythm of life to be here with us and to share this space and to get engaged in dialogue. If this is your regular time, you always show up. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. And even if you're not live, you're going to show up at some other time. I'm grateful for that as well. If this is your first time, I do want to let you know that there are ways that you can engage with the good fight. One of the ways that you can engage is to find yourself reflected in the stories that will be told on tonight, the stories that will be shared. It's one story from the book of Samuel. So it's one story, but there are many characters, and you may be playing in your life right now one of the role of one of the characters in the story, or maybe you have in your past, or maybe this world is preparing you to prepare to play one of the roles. So find yourself reflected in the text, and then begin to interrogate yourself, to ask questions about, is that the role you want to play? If not, why are you playing it? If not, how can you stop playing it? Like, just begin to see if you can't name what it is that you are feeling and thinking about the role, and then go from there. A second way that you can engage with the good fight is to center someone else in the story. The characters in the story do not reflect anything that you are aware of or you are familiar with in your own lived experience, and that is okay. Everything ain't about you. Center the other person and allow their story to feed you, allow their story to pour into your soul. Receive it as the gift that it is, and then depend on the power of your faith, however you practice it, to allow to make it manifest in a way that benefits you and benefits those around you in one way or another. A third way that you can engage with a good fight is to see this as a walk through a door, that this is just the beginning of a conversation that may last who knows how long. And maybe you'll stop thinking about it for now and then pick back up another time. But this is just not the end of the conversation when we stopped and end the stream at 8 o'clock. But it will continue to live in your cells, and you will use it in some way at some point with some person, or even just by yourself. And then if you'd like to comment, you can comment right here, and I can't comment back. If I comment back, it's going to show up on YouTube. I got to figure out that YouTube thing. Anyway, it is showing up on YouTube. And we can have conversation together. You can have conversation with the other people who are on the live. It just, however we flow, that's just how we flow. And I love to get in on the flow. So thank you again for joining us for the good fight. I am your guide, the Reverend Doctor. Please, you can call me Denise. It's okay. It really is okay. So I want to talk about the topic for tonight, which is theology versus Barbieology. Theology versus Barbieology. Now, this, hopefully it's obvious that this conversation has something to do with the movie Barbie. Barbieology is what I'm calling it. So what is Barbieology? What is theology? Logy as a suffix means to name a subject of interest. All right. So you are going to, there's something, some content matter that you are interested in, that you want to focus on, and that is what the logy part of the word is. So when I look at, and some people start with the ology part of the word, and so if they say Barbieology, I have chosen Barbie as a subject matter, as a subject topic, as a topic of concern for me. So I want to study it, I want to think about it, I want to gain some understanding around it, and so I'm calling it Barbieology. And so the question is this theology or Barbieology? So the prefix theos, Theo, means God. So if we add that to the ology, we have chosen God as a subject matter, as a topic of concern, as an issue that we like to deal with. And so that's what theology means. And so the question is now on the table for us when we think about practicing our faith, because the good fight is all about us being on a journey to a deconstructed, a decolonized faith. How do I have a faith that is pure? How do I have a faith that is raw? How do I have a faith that is relevant? How do I have a faith that is reflective of how I am able to show up as a human to other humans during this day and time in this season of my life? We're on the quest for that. And as we are on the quest for that, the journey towards that goal, then this is one of the questions I'm asking us to consider. Are we, when we study or when we think about our relationship with God, is it something that is focused on God as the center point? Or are we creating a Barbie? Not a God, but a Barbie. And I want to tell you how it got. First, let me just say, I have not finished watching the movie Barbie. As a matter of fact, I don't even really think I should say I haven't finished, because I'm only like 6 or 7 minutes in. So I can't, I feel like that's not even fair for me to say I haven't finished, because the implication is that I'm kind of far along in it and I only have a little ways to go. But I just started it. And I think in the first 6 minutes, I stopped because it led me through a door. I wanted to stop. I had to stop watching it because now I'm concerned. It caused me to be concerned about so many other things. And so and I never did circle back to it. But the reason I was even interested in Barbie in the first place is not because of the movie, because as far as I know, my cousin Candace she loves the movie. She has recommended it to me. She absolutely thinks that I should watch it. She thinks that I'm going to glean something very helpful and productive from it. And she really is hoping that I watch it so that we can have a conversation about it. But that's not why I watched it. That's not why it was on my mind. What made it pop up for me as something of consideration was when I started seeing articles or marketing or advertisements about a Black Barbie. And that is what caused me to pause for a moment to think about, what does it mean for us to now suggest that it is important for us to have a Black Barbie? Now, if there's already been a Black Barbie like for the last 5 years, I don't know. I don't have any children. I ain't thinking about no dolls. But for me, this concept of a Black Barbie is new to me. And so I started thinking, wait, what now? We're going to do what? And so my concern is that when we think about Barbie, first of all, Barbie is a doll. Barbie is not real. It is a doll. She is a doll. And if you were to take the measurements of Barbie as a doll and then try to duplicate them for a woman as human, it would be unreal. It is unrealistic. This woman would not be able to walk or stand. She wouldn't even be able to hold herself up, because what we have created as a doll is not something that is attainable as a human. It is a doll. And I feel like some people are saying, like, duh, of course it's not a doll. But I don't know if you've ever watched the series Botched. 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 Botched is about it's like a reality show where these people, male, female, gender nonconforming, they come to these, oh my goodness, what do you call them? The people that do the surgical, I cannot believe I'm blanking on this word. They perform surgery, elective surgery, to give you the whatever you want. You want to change or not reconstructive surgery. I mean, reconstructive surgery is part of it, but plastic surgeons. That's what I think. I think that's what the word I'm going to say. That's what I'm going to use right now. The people come to them because they were trying to have some kind of enhancement. They've already had a surgery to enhance some part of their bodies in the way that they believe they will be enhanced. So they want a thinner nose, they want thicker lips, they want higher cheekbones, they want a smaller stomach, They want whatever it is that they want, that they believe will make themselves look better. They have had a surgery, and the surgery did not work out for them for any number of reasons, a variety of reasons. Some of them are vain, some of them are medical, some of them are psychological, some of them are emotional, some of them are social. And so they come to these particular doctors. I can't think of their names right now. They come to these particular doctors so that these doctors can reverse the adverse effect of the first surgery. And so that's why it's called botched, because you had a surgery and it got jacked up. It was botched. And now you're trying to get it redone so that you can get the results that you are looking for. And in watching this reality documentary, however you want to call it, there was a woman whose goal was to be Barbie. She was trying to get her body to duplicate that of Barbie, which means she was having ribs removed. She was having her stomach. It was all kinds of extreme measures to which she was going in order to achieve this Barbie figure, which is unrealistic, which is why she's having to remove parts of her body to try to attain it. Now, yes, that is true. That's just one woman. And so this is not all about Barbie, but it is about us trying to attain an unrealistic representation of who we are. And so that's what Barbie means to me. When I think about Barbie, this is a made up, imaginative figment. It's a figment of somebody's imagination of what the most perfect body, the most perfect woman would look like. So she's blonde, and she's white, and she's thin. She's curvy, but not curves like a Black woman or a non-white woman. She's curvy like a Barbie. Let me just say it like that. And so when I began to hear that we were going to have a Black Barbie, I was like, why would Black people in particular get excited about having a Black version of an unrealistic figure? Why would I want my daughter to now find herself reflected in something that is dangerous to uphold as a model for us? Something that not only is dangerous, but is psychologically damaging. It is traumatizing if we hold this symbol, this figure of this doll that we call Barbie, up as something to which we should try to attain. Now, according to what my cousin says, and even at the beginning of the movie, it is very clear that the message is that all of us can be Barbie. All of us can be this woman who is more than what she looks like on the outside. Absolutely. That's the message that I'm understanding from the beginning, and the message that I understand from my cousin, that this is a movie about inclusivity. We want everybody to know you can be Barbie. You can be Barbie. You Barbie. You Barbie. Everybody's Barbie. And so we're trying to include everybody in this moment, which on its face sounds like a great thing to do. Only what we're trying to include them in is something that is unattainable. It is something to which we should not ascribe. It is something that we should be trying to dismantle, this notion of that this is the type of person, this is the type of character, this is who we should want to be, a Barbie. And when I thought about that as it relates to Barbie, and I'm saying, so now in the name of inclusivity, Black people want to see ourselves. We want our daughters, we want our nieces, we want our granddaughters, we want our children, our gender nonconforming, our transgender girls, regardless of how you define woman. We want them to see themselves as Black, reflected in this notion that you too are Barbie. When really, I would say, no. First of all, not only do I not want my Black children or my non-white children to be Barbies, I don't want Barbie to exist. This system, this idea, this notion of this kind of perfection that is perceived from the outside in order for you to get in on what it means to be accepted, what it means to be popular, what it means to be wanted, what it means to be desired, what it means to belong. We don't need a figure to help us see what it's like to be the one that people want. So I don't want a Barbie, period, let alone a black Barbie. And so this idea that we're going to now make it so that we can also be this is where I think we get confused, not just as black people, but as a world, that we are watching before our eyes. We are watching things unfold before our eyes that are damning to us as a nation, as a country. And yet instead of fighting to get rid of it, we're fighting to figure out how we can belong to it, how we can become a part of it, how we can make it so that we fit in. And as I was thinking about that as it relates to Barbie, I started to say, I think that's exactly what we do with our understanding of God. And I think about that as a person who has been estranged from the church based on who you are, whether it is your race, whether it is your socioeconomic status, because I pastored a church that did not believe that you were worthy to be called member if you could not give your financial resources. If you were not a tither, then you really didn't count in the church. So socioeconomic status mattered. So some of us, it's about race, socioeconomic status. Some of it is ethnicity. I used to pastor a church where there were 2 bathrooms in the building, but one of them was not used by as many people because of its position in the church, but the other one had generated more traffic. But the way that the smaller bathroom was being managed, a person who was white was actually the one who designed the bathroom, but there was someone who was brown who was tending the bathroom. And the white person did not want the brown person to have anything to do with touching or rearranging or managing the bathroom, even though that was the brown person's job. We were paying her to do that. So race and ethnicity played a role in how we valued her as a member of our body. So sometimes it's race, sometimes it is a socioeconomic status, sometimes it's ethnicity, sometimes it's sexual orientation, because my transition, my shift in theology, study of God, my shift in theology started when I began to be a pastor, because what I understood as how we honor and serve God, how we live out our faith, how I was striving to live out mine, turned out to be nothing like what I was practicing as a pastor. Turned out to be at odds with what I thought it meant to be a pastor, right? So theory is one thing, praxis is another. So in my head, I understand something, but when I'm actually trying to do it and put it into action, it was something totally different. And so my praxis, my shift in theology started when I was actually practicing my craft, my skill, my gift as pastor. And then it morphed when I became a faith organizer for the Human Rights Campaign, because now I'm face to face with people, listening to their stories, feeling their pulse, hearing their heartbeat as they tell me that they've been thrown out of the church because of their sexual orientation. So we are, it could be race, it could be ethnicity, it could be sexual orientation, it could also be gender, because when you think about so many of the traditional churches, especially traditional Black Baptist churches, if you are a woman, you are not allowed to be a pastor. You are not allowed to be in the pulpit. You couldn't even step behind the podium when I was growing up in the Baptist church. And so this notion that we have, I'm wondering if this idea of what it means to study God and to be in relationship with God, are we really trying to make sure that we are creating a space that is filled with the love of the Spirit of the living God that does embrace all? Or are we seeking to include people only to control them based on the model that has been put before us? Because that's what Barbie is doing. Barbie is saying, yes, all of you can be Barbie. All of you can be just like me. And this is a controlled measure of what it means to be this particular kind of person and what that looks like for the world and how you're supposed to respond to the world. So have we even if it was unintended, even if it was inadvertent? Have we done that now in the church? Have we created this system of loving God that says we include people, but really it is simply one way that we are complicit in a system that's already discriminating folks, even in our midst? And so that's where we are tonight, asking about theology. Is it theology or is it Barbieology? Is it a very free-flowing opportunity for people to come together in one space, gathered with the understanding that there is one God, yes, but that the manifestation of the gifts of that God and how that manifestation demonstrates, shows up in us, varies. And there is no set way of being or doing, because we are flowing with a spirit that cannot be contained. So, hey, Deidre, I think you just wrote this. So you are complicit. You saying I'm complicit? Denise is complicit? Are you saying churchgoers are complicit? Are you saying religion is complicit? Who is the you in your statement? That's what I'm asking. And so that's the question that I want to ask. That's the question that's on the table for us on tonight. Theology or Barbieology? When we are creating, or when we are designing, or when we are planning how to be church, how to be faithful, how to practice. Oh, okay, here we go. Deidre says, pretty much everyone, when it comes to religion, we are complicit. We are complicit in what? In the systems of domination, oppression, and exclusion. Okay, absolutely. Okay, I see. We're pretty much everyone when it comes to religion. Okay, so what I always remember what Hotep says to us all the time. If we really want to begin to talk, yep, Deidre says, yep, that's what we think, all of us. Well, I can feel some people taking issue with you saying that they are I ain't complicit. Don't talk about my faith. Don't And so Hotep always reminds us that it is important for us to understand the etymology of a word, so that we can better understand how we should use it and how it should manifest in our walk, in our daily walk. And so when we think about the word religion, when we look at its etymology, the beginning, what does it mean? What does the word mean? Where did it come from? How did we get to it? It means to bind. That's what religion means. It means to bind. So those of us who are practicing an organized religion, I don't want to talk out of my scope. I don't know what it means to be a part of a religion that's not organized, because I've never done that. But for those of us to bind back, okay, so Deidre corrects me, not just to bind, but to bind back. Okay, I can't go there, because my question then would be, back to what? If religion means to bind back, what was it at first? Yeah. So I don't know about the bind back, but I know it means to bind. And so if I'm practicing organized religion, then the structure of religion itself is to get me attached and adhere to a specific set of doctrine, of beliefs, of convictions, so that I can be molded and shaped into whatever that idea is. And so it can be the Christian idea, it could be the Buddhist idea, it could be the Jewish idea, it could be the Islamic idea, whatever the idea of what religion looks like. The goal of the religion, the system of religion itself, is to bind me to that, so that there is no freedom for me to do anything beyond what it says I can do. And so I'm constantly trying to follow the letter of this law. I'm constantly trying to make sure that I say the right words, I go to the right church, I wear the right clothes. It's all about this structure and this adherence to something that somebody said is what we're supposed to do. However, what we are learning, some of us have already figured it out a long time ago, some of us are learning it now, that what we have learned is that system of religion is unattainable. When we think about Jesus, period, the reason that the Bible even decided, the writers of the Bible, the reason that they decided that there had to be a Jesus, that there had to be a New Testament, is because the people could not live into what it meant to be faithful in the Old Testament, because the 10 commandments became 600 and something laws that no one could live that way. It was not possible. The same way it is not possible for you to live as a human um, um, modeled after Barbie. It is unattainable. It is not possible. Some of our doctrines right now, even in the New Testament church, when I say New Testament church, many of us have said, yes, the Old Testament is what it is, but really we're going to focus on what Jesus says when Jesus was made manifest. Jesus is very much present in the Old Testament, but we don't think about it that way. We only think about Jesus showing up in John chapter 1, verse 14. And then the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And then we think about the 33 and a half years that Jesus was on this earth. And so all of our understanding, all of our theology, our understanding of who God is wrapped up in this New Testament when Jesus comes, because Jesus represents grace. Why do we need grace? Because we could not live into this idea of what it meant to be faithful in the Old Testament. So now I need Jesus to give me the help that I need, the willpower that I need, the strength that I need to be who God has called me to be. And I'm looking to Jesus for that. And herein lies our problem, because we have set up Jesus to be perfect. We have set up Jesus to be one who had no sin. We have set up Jesus to be, this is who we are supposed to be. We're supposed to pattern ourselves after Jesus, like they have asked us to pattern ourselves after Barbie. We're supposed to pattern ourselves after Jesus, and it is unattainable. We will never ever get there, and the Bible doesn't expect us to, but our theology does, and that is really the crux of the matter. We're reading the Bible, we say we're following it, but we are not digging into it and saying, whoa. Over here it says this, over here it says this. Let's wrestle with this until we realize what we can use and we throw away what we can't. So Jesus, yeah, I think I can call you Jesus. I just said this Sunday. If what it means to be Jesus is that you are God in the flesh, I don't have a problem with it. Okay. Could it be about sacrifice? Could our lives be about sacrifice? Jesus' life is absolutely about sacrifice, right? Like the whole point of Jesus, again, is to give us grace. But Jesus comes to be the ultimate sacrifice, because in the Old Testament, you had all of these offerings. You had your burnt offerings, the Jesus story. Okay, could it be about sacrifice? The Jesus story, could it be about sacrifice? Absolutely. So Jesus says, so the Bible, the way that we've been taught, the Bible says, okay, in order to worship God in the Old Testament, you had to offer up things. You had all these grain offerings. You had the burnt offerings. And so these were sacrifices that you made on the altar to God as a means of worship. And you would sacrifice animals. Some cases you would sacrifice people. Remember the story Ram in the Bush, Isaiah. And so you have people who say, okay, the way that we worship is to offer a sacrifice. And so now here Jesus comes and says, I will be the ultimate sacrifice, so that we no longer have to worship God through the sacrifice, because Jesus steps into that space for us. Jesus is now the one who is offered up to God, who takes on all the sins of the world, because you would go and sacrifice their offerings so that you could be pure and holy in God's sight. In order for you to be present with God, you had to have a certain you had to be clean, and your cleanliness came through your sacrifice and whatever it is you were offering. And that offering would be a sweet savor. It would be a sweet smell, cleansing the air, cleansing your body, cleansing your soul, so that you are now able to reside in the presence of God. So now here Jesus says, I'm going to take on all the sin of the world. So you no longer have to worry about offering a sacrifice. You no longer have to worry about whether or not you are clean enough, because your relationship with me, your connection to me as the ultimate sacrifice, gives you the opportunity to be present with God. So as long as you are in me and I am in you, as long as we are one, as long as you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, then you are saved. And now you have a right to come boldly to the throne of grace, where you may receive grace and find mercy to help you in your time of need. So Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. And now, because of that, when we pattern ourselves after Jesus, we believe that our life is supposed to be about sacrifice. And so we are always talking about what we're going to sacrifice. What do we say? We're sacrificing our time to make sure that we volunteer for the food pantry. We are sacrificing our children to make sure that they are that they spend all the time they need to spend with God so they can grow up to be who God called them to be. We sacrifice time with our spouses. I can't be with you tonight, baby, because I got to go to Bible study, because I got to do all of these things in order for me to be right with God. And so we live a life of sacrifice. I got to sacrifice my finances. I got to give up my tithes so that I can make sure that there's meat in my house. Bring ye all the tithes to my house, that there may be meat in my house. And prove me now that I will rebuke the devourer for your sake. So sacrifice. And for Black people, we have now also interpreted that to mean that people can do whatever they want. We can sacrifice our respect. We can sacrifice our dignity. We can sacrifice our integrity. We can sacrifice our Blackness. We can sacrifice our humanity in order to say, no, I'm not human, I'm Christian. So you can kill me. It's okay. I forgive you because I'm Christian. So sacrifice absolutely becomes a central component to what it means to live out our faith. So Deidre says, I think it was a reinforcement of the Old Testament sacrifice, which also states it was never asked for. I think it was a reinforcement of the Old Testament sacrifice, which also states it was never asked for. I don't know about that, because when you say it was never asked for, to offer sacrifices to God, I don't know how it began, but I know it was absolutely a requirement, because you had to come. Think about when we love to tell the story about how Jesus got mad, right? Okay, wait a minute. Deidre says, in other words, a control. I absolutely think it's a control in the New Testament. I'm not sure it was a control in the Old Testament, because see, one of the things I think we need to think about in terms of the Old Testament is like, we're trying to figure this out. In the New Testament, it's like we're in the New Testament looking back at the Old Testament and we're like, oh, I see what they were trying to do. Oh, so we figured some things out. It's just like now when we talk about, we use all these words that we use now. We talk about somebody who's transgender, right? In the Bible, they would have used the word eunuch. They're understanding what it meant to be a person who decides for themselves that they are going to change the structure of their genitalia on purpose. We would say so that you are able or no longer able to reproduce in a certain way. Then we call that person a eunuch. You could be man-made eunuch or you could be a God-made eunuch. But now we have a different understanding of what it means to be in control of your body. Those of you who are God created as eunuchs, we have a different understanding. So now we have more language. Now we have more understanding. Now we have more insight. Now we have more experience. And so we're like, okay, I get it. But in the Old Testament, it's like, no. We making it up as we go. We just trying to figure this thing out. So I don't know if it was a measure of control in the Old Testament. I feel like they was trying to figure out, how do we worship this God that we believe set us free? Because actually the Bible didn't start with Genesis. The Bible started with Exodus. Do you all know this author named Nick Stone? Nick Stone wrote a book called Dear Martin. And it is a story about a young man who's living in a world where things don't seem to be just in the way that he understood justice. And so he looked up to Dr. Martin Luther King as one who was a fighter of, an interpreter of, one who was seeking to realize what justice really looks like. So in this book, he is writing to Dr. King, trying to figure out how Dr. King would respond to the injustices that are happening to him and to those around him. So the book is called Dear Justice. There's another book, a follow-up book that's called, Dear Martin. There's a follow-up book that's called Dear Justice. And in Dear Justice, at the very beginning of the book, Nick Stone, who is the author, says, I had no intention of writing a second book. I was only trying to write Dear Martin, but somebody came to me and said, I don't see how Dear Martin actually applies to my life. Can you write a book for me that applies to what I'm going through so that I can see this as relevant, so I can apply it to my life and I can feel like I am being the person that I'm called to be? And so now she has written a second book, and that's a sequel to the first. Well, that's the same way we can look at the Old Testament, that the writers never expected there to be a New Testament. They never expected there to be a sequel to what they were writing. The Torah was all it was. And so now you have people that came along and they were like, I don't see how this works for me. I don't see how this is relevant for me. I don't see what I can do with this. I need you to write another book that I can say, oh, okay, this is what I can use. This is what speaks to me. This is what I can grab hold to. And we have the New Testament. So I don't know if they were being controlled in the Old Testament. They were more so like, look, can we figure out what we're trying to do here? But let me see what you're saying right here. You sacrifice your children in Gehenna, and I never asked you to in Jeremiah. Oh, okay, in Jeremiah 19:5. Okay, so you're talking about a particular, So you're talking about a particular practice that the people of Gehenna decided that they were going to do amongst themselves. I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I think that's different from the sacrifices that were meant to be burnt offerings and grain offerings and other kinds of offerings, to say, this is how I worship God. This is how I cleanse myself so that I can be present for God. So yes, I get what you're saying. Absolutely. Absolutely. That it wasn't asked for. I see exactly what you're saying. And so when we have this book of the New Testament that we have now decided is only about Jesus, and we are trying to be Jesus, we're trying to be like Jesus because Jesus was perfect, Jesus was sinless. This is how we are beginning to understand theology. Oh, so I was saying that let's think about the etymology of the word theology. What does it mean, and where does it come from? And yes, it is the study of God. It is the study of God, but who is God? And we have to begin to ask the question, who is God? And even regardless of who you say God is, because I don't really feel like that's where I want to spend the time, where we say, who is God? The question for me becomes, why do you need God? Why do you need a God? Because if God is already at work, remember, going back to John chapter 1, John 1:1, in the beginning was God. So before any of us knew anything about anything, God already is. And before God does anything like what we say God does in Genesis, when he creates the world, creates the people, before any of that happens, God is. God was already present. And so God did God's thing. God said, okay, well, I'm going to create. Okay, this is all God doing all by God's self. And then we decided, oh, wait, it's not enough to just know that there is a God that is at work among us. We got to figure out how to know what God is going to say. We want to know what God says, how God says it, to whom God says it, how the people respond, how we're supposed to respond, what we're supposed to wear to respond, who can't respond, who can't. So now we're going to try to formulate God. We can't just say there is a God. We got to make sure that we craft this God to be a certain kind of God. And then we went so far to say a certain kind of God to a certain kind of people. And if you want to belong, you got to be like us. So if you want to be popular, you got to be like Barbie. If you want to be wanted and desired, you got to look like Barbie. And so in order for us to say, how do I get included? Well, I'm just going to change the face of Barbie, but I'm going to leave Barbie intact. So the system is still in place. I'm just going to paint it black. And then say, oh, but look, Black people, you're a part of the system now. Isn't that great? The very same system that was oppressing you in the first place, that wouldn't give you a face. There haven't always been Black Barbies or non-white Barbies. But that's interesting, because when you study the history of dolls started out being symbolic of idols, gods, or ancestors. So surely Black people have ancestors. So we have ancestors, and dolls were initially meant to be images of our ancestors. Why did my niece grow up in a world where there weren't any Black? What happened to the Black images? What happened to the non-white images? Are you saying that we don't have no ancestors? So this system, so this God that it was already there, if we had left God alone, we would be fine. But once we decided to create a system on how you're supposed to respond to God, then it became exclusive, then it became controlling, then it became discriminatory, then it became filled with war and fear and hate. And now we're saying, but we want everybody to be included. So we're going to let you be a part of it, only we're not going to dismantle anything. And so there are some churches that I've seen that are, we'll say that we are, I don't want to say that they say, we'll say we're non-denominational. That means everybody can come. Right? Everybody can come. We're non-denominational, so you don't have to worry about being Baptist. You don't have to worry about being any of those things. And so you take off the name non-denominational, but when I walk in, the rules are still the same. I can't cuss. I can't drink. I can't smoke. Well, that's the same system that was controlling me over here. And it was a system that was called Baptist, or whatever words you want to use. I grew up Baptist. It was called Baptist. And so now you take the name off, but the system is still there. So you say, this is Barbie. It's a system of unrealistic expectations. But if I paint the white face and put a black face on and say, oh, you're included in it. Yes, but it's the same system of unrealistic expectations. So now we're creating and designing these new age churches where we're having these praise bands and we're no longer using denominational names. And we now have, you can wear shorts and you can wear jeans, and you can do all of these things. Same gender loving people can come to this church, and you can get married in this church if you want to. Even if you are transgender, you can hold a role. We say all of these things, but we have not dismantled the system of control that requires us to sacrifice in order to be like a Jesus who is unrealistic for us to attain. And so is it theology or is it Barbieology? Are we just fooling ourselves to say we're trying to create a space that is loving and gentle and kind, so that we can have everybody say, I belong? And so our need to belong thus breeds our complicity. And again, I'm back to, what do you need to belong to? I need to belong to this religion. In this particular case, I need to belong to Christianity. Why? Because I need a king. And that's what 1 Samuel is about. 1 Samuel is about the people saying, look, we need a king. Look, we need a God. Look, we need a king to tell us what to do. Look, we need a God to tell us how to live. And God says, what God basically tells Samuel to tell them, you know what? Let me read it to you. I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna put it's the entire chapter 8. I think it is 20 verses, maybe 21 verses, which means that I'm going against my educational training, which says that you should not read more than 10 verses into a person's hearing, because they stop paying attention after verse 10, because they don't have the capacity to listen any longer than that. I'm going to just throw that out the window, and I'm going to say, let's read the entire chapter of 1 Samuel chapter 8. And I do have it in sections, though. And we may or may not discuss the sections, but first I just want to go all the way through and read it so that you can hear what it says. And I'm putting it up here so that you can read along for yourself, so that you can see if I make a mistake, you can call me on it. So you're not just taking my word for it, you are reading along for yourself. So here is 1 Samuel chapter 8, and I think it's 4 different sections that it is broken up into. So let me see if I can find it. Okay, right here. Let me get something to drink. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 8. When Samuel was old, he appointed his sons to be judges for Israel. Samuel's first son was named Joel. His second son was named Abijah. Joel and Abijah were judges in Beersheba. But Samuel's sons did not live the same way he did. Joel and Abijah accepted bribes. They took money secretly and changed their decisions in court. They cheated people in court. So all the elders of Israel met together and went to Ramah to meet with Samuel. The elders said to Samuel, "You're old and your sons don't live right. They are not like you. Now give us a king to rule us like all the other nations." So the elders asked for a king to lead them. Samuel thought this was a bad idea, so he prayed to the Lord. The Lord told Samuel, Do what the people tell you. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me. They don't want me to be their king. They are doing the same thing they have always done. I took them out of Egypt, but they left me and served other gods. They are doing the same thing to you. So listen to the people and do what they say, but give them a warning. Tell the people what a king will do to them. Tell them how a king rules people. And I do want to stop right there, and then we'll pick up the next. I think it's three more sections. I'll pick up the next 3 sections. I just need to stop right there, because here the people are saying we want a king. God says, no, I am your king. You already have a God who is omnipotent, all powerful, omniscient everywhere at the same time, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, no, omnipotent, all powerful, omniscient, all knowing, omnipresent everywhere at the same time. You already have a God who is bigger than anything you've ever known before. There's already a force in this world that can connect to you, and you can connect to it. You can be led by it and guided by it. You have your own relationship that's all about, you already have someone to whom you can communicate any kind of way you want to. You already have everything that you need in this God. But the people say, no, give us a king. I want to be like everybody else. They got kings. Why can't we have a king? And so Samuel was like, yeah, whoa, this is not a good idea. And they're like, man, we ain't thinking about you. Give us a king. So he goes to the Lord, like, Lord, they want a king. And God says, yeah, that's what they always do. Every time I deliver them, they find themselves back in bondage again. Think about me. Let me just use my own life. So, okay, so you come from a home of violence. You have a father who's violent, physically violent. You know what it means to feel hopeless and helpless and out of control in your own home. So you decide that, okay, I'm not going to be, God, if you get me out this house, I promise you'll never have to worry about me subjecting myself or feeling like this ever again, because I'm going to fix it so that nobody else controls me anymore. So God says, okay, I delivered you through I fixed it. This was my understanding. Because remember, I was holier than I am now. When I say holy, I had a different understanding than I do now. So I believe that God kept me alive long enough to survive the violence in my home, so that I now have full control over my body. Nobody else will ever subject me in this way ever again, only for me to then turn around and get into a relationship with a man who is violent. Now, he ain't beat me. I ended up beating him because I'm a violent. Okay, so now I'm in a relationship. Oh, that's what I should go with. So now I'm in a relationship and I become the violent one. He was violent, yes, but just because of his lifestyle. Like, he had to carry a gun because he was dope dealer doing all that. Yeah, he'll shoot somebody up. Like, that's part of his lifestyle. But for me, I'm going to bust a cap on him. Like, I'm going to swing on you. I'm going to put a hole in this hotel room wall because I have gotten upset. Yeah, I'm the one who's beating my brother while he was trying to drive a car. Like, I'm the one who's now. So you delivered me in order for me to live a different life, only for me to turn around and perpetuate the same kind of violence on somebody else. And so God says, don't think that this is about you, Samuel. This is about people's understanding of who I am. Or should God say, the people's misunderstanding of who I am? Because you're not really trying to get to know me. You're trying to instill a system. You're more concerned about being like other people. You're more concerned about belonging to a thing that other people have. You're more concerned about grabbing hold to something that seems to be out of your reach. When I've said to you, I am your God. I am all that you need. I am more than enough. What do we say? God is Jehovah Jireh. I'm your provider. I'm Jehovah Rapha, your healer. I'm Jehovah Shammah, the one who is always with you. Everything that you need, you already have, but you dismiss that because you need to be able to control something and put a system in place that allows you to be who you want to be. So is it theology or is it Barbieology? Because clearly you're not trying to get to know God, because you don't need a king for that. As a matter of fact, God says, God tells Samuel, warn them. Tell them, let me tell you what a king is going to do. Let me tell you what a king is going to do. And that's what we're going to pick up. the people asked for a king. So Samuel told them everything the Lord said. Samuel said, if you have a king ruling over you, this is what he will do. He will take away your sons and force them to serve him. He will force them to be soldiers. They must fight from his chariots and become horse soldiers in his army. Your sons will become guards running in front of the king's chariots. A king will force your sons to become soldiers. He will choose which of your sons will be officers over 1,000 men and which will be officers over 50 men. In other words, if you have a king, they're going to build a military. Hello, America. If you get a king, the first thing he's going to do is establish a military. He's going to take your sons away from you. He's going to put them on the front lines, and he's going to kill them in the name of the country. And you're going to build a military that the king rules, that you don't have any control over, because when they say they force you to put your children in the draft. They force them to become soldiers. And now in this country, our military budget outweighs any other budget that we have on the paper. That's what the king is going to do. Keeps going. He says, a king will force your sons to plow his fields and gather his harvest. He will force some of your sons to make weapons for war and to make things for his chariots. A king will force some of your sons to plow his field and gather his harvest. He will force some of your sons to make weapons for war and to make things for his chariot. In other words, the king is going to put your sons to work so that you can create and produce products for the king's benefit. So this is what? Capitalism. I'm telling you, you already got a God. You don't need anything else. But you say, no, give me a king. And with the king comes a military and comes capitalism that your children are now forced into, and you no longer have the control that you thought you needed. Because you wanted a king so that you can have control. You needed somebody to lead you because God wasn't good enough. Because other people had a king, yeah, and we ain't got nothing but God. Give us what they have. We want to be like them. You end up with military, you end up with capitalism. It goes on to say, a king will take your daughters and force some of them to make perfume for him and some to cook and bake for him. Let me just stop right there. A king will take your daughters and force some of them to make perfume for him and some to cook and bake for them. So now we're going to create a system where women are servants in the home. We still fighting that same system now. The king is going to come in and say, let me tell you, I need somebody who's going to serve me. I want you to stay at home while I go to work. I want you to stay at home and make sure the house is all right. Make sure I got food on the table. Make sure you are presentable. Make sure I smell good. Make sure I look good. Make sure I feel good. Make sure I'm well fed and I am well, I was going to say inebriated, but I'm well, I don't have any thirst. That's what your daughters are going to do. Your sons are in the military. They working for capitalism. Your daughters are serving me so that I can look good and smell good and be good and feel good and have all that I need. Verse 14, a king will take your best fields, vineyards, and olive groves. He will take them from you and give them to his officers. Let me stop right there. So what does that look like for us? That looks like reparations. Or the lack thereof. I'm going to take your land. I'm going to take your 40 acres and your mule, and I'm going to give them to the people I want to give them to. That's what I'm going to do. So now this system you created because you wanted a king has now left you yearning for reparations. Because if you had stayed with me, we had a whole system in place that was not designed on who had and who did not have. Because I was God of everybody. At the same time, in the same way. But that wasn't good enough. We needed a system where somebody was going to tell us what to do. And that somebody was corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right? So let's keep going with what else the king is going to do. And a king will take your vineyards and give them. Then it says in verse 15, right here, verse 15. He will take 1/10 of your grain and grapes, and he will give them to his officers and servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and grapes, and he will give them to his officers and servants. Where do we talk about giving the 10th? When we say bring the tithe to the storehouse, ain't that a 10th? So you're going to take my money in the church, and what you're going to do when you got to pay salary. So you're going to take my money, you're going to give it to the pastor, you're going to give it to the assistant pastor, you're going to give it to the administrative assistant. I'm going to take 1/10 of your resources. I don't care what kind of resources they are, but especially your financial resources. I'm going to take 1/10 of them and I'm going to distribute them to the people that I have elevated in this place so that they can be over you as your leaders, because you want a king. Keep going. Verse 16 right here. A king will take your men and women servants. He will take your best cattle and your donkeys. He will take use of them for his own work. He will take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves will become slaves of this king. How do you become slaves of the king? We are slaves to capitalism, because everything we do is about making money, and the money that we make, we then turn around and feed it back into the system of capitalism, because the more money we make, the more we spend on material things. You said Melchizedek, I can't remember how to say it, was the first one, was the first king. Okay, I received that. I was trying to stick with Samuel. I didn't want to go. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, I don't want to have to bring him all the way up to Samuel. I just want to charge with Samuel. I just want to start with Samuel. So I told my friend, I said, somebody's going. I thought it was gonna be Phyllis Brown. I said, somebody's gonna say something about this. Yes, thank you, Deidre. You are right. So this is not the first time that this is not the first time that the Israelites turn in, and that's what God says to Samuel when they first said, I want a king. He said, this is what they always do. This is what they always do. Every time I show up for them as king, every time I show up for them as deliverer, as rescuer, as provider, every time they turn their backs on me in favor of someone else. So you're right. This is not the first time. Absolutely not. And it probably won't be the last. Look at how we are going. And then it says, and you yourselves will become slaves of this king. And then verse 18 says, when that time comes, you will cry because of the king you chose, but the Lord won't answer you at that time. And that's why some of us as Christians, especially as Black Christians, we still holding fast to this traditional theology that we have come to be conditioned around, because we believe that even though God hasn't answered us yet, God will answer us sooner or later, by and by. By and by, when we still singing "I'll Fly Away," okay? Because it may not come in our lifetime. It's gonna happen when we die. After we die, no, we actually could fight for it now, but we're too busy listening to this king and following the system that this king has established. And in this system, God says, "You're gonna want me right now, but I'm not gonna come right now." And that's what we still believe. We just waiting on him to come. We waiting on the second coming of Christ. And finally, it ends with this. But the people would not listen to Samuel. They said, no, we want a king to rule over us. Then we will be the same as all the other nations. Our king will lead us. He will go before us and fight our battles. Samuel listened to the people and then repeated their words to the Lord. The Lord answered, listen to them and give them a king. Then Samuel told the Israelites, you will have a king. Now go home. Samuel said, I tried to tell y'all. As a matter of fact, y'all done made me so sick. Wish Granny get out my face. And what I'm not going to get into chapter 9, but what I wish he would have said is, and when it don't work out for you, do not come crying to me. You go to your king. Go to your God. Go somewhere, but I don't want to hear, because I'm trying to tell you that you do not need anyone to control you. So when we begin to talk about religion, we're going back to what Jesus said. I keep calling you Jesus. Oh, what is that? I keep calling you Jesus. Keep going back to what Jesus says. Okay, why do you need? You're being bound back to something. I don't know what the back is, to be honest with you. I don't know. But you're being bound to something that is not going to keep you free without religion. You're liberated without this religion being the system that tells you what you can and cannot do. God, the Spirit, gives you freedom. The Bible says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So the Spirit of the Lord says you have the freedom to worship me however you want to, and to not worship me However, you don't want to. As a matter of fact, you got the freedom not to worship me at all. We are living in a world that now says everything has to be about Christ. Our legislation, our education, everything has to be about Christ. When God says, you ain't even have to talk about, Christ don't even have to exist for you. I'm going to be God anyway. Whether you say Jesus or not, whether you pray or not, whether you tithe or not, I'm still going to be God. There's nothing that your king can do that's going to change the fact that I'm the one who God is. So rather than listen to a king who's going to set up all these systems that keep you oppressed, that keep you discriminated against, that keep you excluded, that keep you at war, stick with me, kid. And what we need to do, and what we need to know, not what we need to do, what we need to know as we leave this place tonight is that that option is still available to you. You can opt out of religion. You can opt out of having a king. You say, well, how you going to opt out of having a king? We live in a world, you got to have a president. Yeah, you got to have a president, but God still is. I don't have to buy into any of these systems. I ain't got to go. I don't have to send my children to war. I don't have to participate in war. I don't have to participate in the military. I don't have to participate in capitalism. Yes, I can create a beloved community where we collect all of our resources and we distribute them amongst each other equally so that no one has lack. It is possible for us to create that community, even in the midst of us having a king. It's available to us. The options are there. We just scared of them. And so the question becomes, why are you scared? And what would it take for us to eliminate that fear so that we can move forward in a spirit of godliness rather than under the reign of a king? Is it theology or Barbieology? Thank y'all for joining me for the good fight. I love being here every Tuesday night. I'll be right back on next week. Hope to see y'all then. Bye.